Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. As always, we are coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well with everybody. So, if you guys have been paying attention to my my social media, you know that this past weekend we had a tragedy in our circle of family, and a very close friend of the family's was murdered on Saturday night, and due to some violence, and I'm still shook up over it. This family was very close with us for so many years. My mom and the husband were best friends for forever since I knew them, and we spent so much time together. But apparently what happened was there was a fight that took place outside of a bar, and one of the guys grabbed a knife and stabbed our friend in the chest, and that just goes to show you, as I said in the video earlier, that our actions always have consequences, and sometimes these consequences can be not only life-changing but deadly as well. So I want to make sure that you guys understand that in any situation, and that's why I do this show, that's why I try to teach people about their emotions, because you don't have to react. And unfortunately, the friend of our family is the one, I believe, that started the fight. So they started the fight and ended up getting stabbed because of it, and it cost them their life. And so I want you guys to understand that just because someone picks a fight with you, or just because you become angry, or just because of any situation, that doesn't mean that you have to engage in this type of violence, or you have to engage in the interaction of anything. So I really, really send so much love out to the family and all their friends. Remember, violence is not the solution. You can walk away, and it takes a big person to walk away from anything. So always remember that. I also want to say that if you can't tell by my breath today, I am not feeling well. I was almost this close to calling off the show tonight. I don't know. I woke up today and my heart just was acting a little funny. For the most part, it's doing really well, and but just today and last Tuesday after the show, I had a little bit of a situation. So if I sound a bit off, if I seem a little bit off, if my mind seems a little slow today, I apologize. Just try to take the good information that I'm giving you anyways, but anyways, on some happier news, our homeless clothes drive this past Saturday went great, and Caleb and I drove all over Broward County, passed out all the clothes we had, and I want to thank each and every person who donated clothes and blankets and personal hygiene items and all sorts of good stuff to the homeless clothes drive. It is because of people like you who make this possible, and let me tell you, everyone that we give our clothes out to really, really appreciates it. You should see the faces, the way they light up, how people get excited, and that tells us how what we should really appreciate in life, because a lot of us were unhappy if we have an old iPhone or we don't have the nicest car, and some people are just happy to have clothes and a roof to sleep under. So just always remember that. But yeah, we had a rain cloud that followed us around throughout all of Broward County, and I don't know why, but it was like no matter where we went, it was this one rain cloud that chased us around, whether we went south, north, east, west, and it just chased us around the whole time. But at least we were able to do what we needed to do. So, but yeah, guys, we're gonna have another one. I don't know if we're gonna have one in September, but if not, then we're gonna have one in October, definitely. And just stay tuned to Spirit Communities on Facebook for more information. So as always, guys, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, and LinkedIn. Caleb is on the Facebook and Twitch live chats, and if you want to ask him a question to ask me, feel free to ask the questions, and he'll relay them to me, and we'll talk about it right here on the show. And as always, if you don't catch the live show, there's always a replay on iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Stitchers, and the website, of course, as well. So, all right, guys, let's get into tonight's show, because this is the third part of the three-part series, and we covered in the first part anger, we covered in the second part happiness, and today we're gonna talk about worry and pensiveness, because there is a little bit of a difference, and a lot of people don't know what pensiveness is, and we're gonna get into that later, all about pensiveness. But let's talk about worry, because we are worrisome. We are all about worrying. Every single one of us, we love to worry. Our society is all about worrying, and we do worry. All of us, if we're in a 9-to-5 job or an 8-to-5 job, if we have a family, we have kids, we have all these things, and basically we have all these expectations, because expectations leads to worriness. Worriness comes from expectations, and we have to look at our expectations, and that's the first thing that I want to talk about, because our expectations come from our childhood. We're conditioned in childhood. We're conditioned in our childhood to be certain ways, to think certain ways, and to be expected of certain things of our parents and our society, and we learn these conditions of expectations so deeply. And for most of us, we don't ever live a life of just being in the moment, of worrying about what's in front of us at the moment, because we're taught from an early age that you have to get good grades, you have to do certain things, you have to, by the time you're in your 20s, you need to go to college and and graduate from the best colleges. You have to go get a job, then you have to be married, and you have to have the white picket fence, and all these certain ideas that go on. And just talking about it, that's very stressful. That is super duper stressful, because those are all expectations that are constantly in your mind. And for those of you who are in sadness and grief over, because maybe you thought that you're in your 40s like me, that you thought, well, hey, you know what, I should be in a relationship right now, or I should be married, I should have kids, I should have all these things. But we don't, do we? A lot of us, there's nobody in life that has a life that goes exactly according to plan. There is nobody that. So why do we have this idea, and why do we expect this idea for this plan that we have in our mind for us to be able to, for life to follow it? We know life isn't going to be like that, but yet we still do it every single day. We still choose to come with these worries and these expectations of these conditionings through our adulthood. I want to make sure that these are a certain way, and a lot of us become control freaks. That's actually how we become control freaks, because a lot of our expectations didn't go the way we want them to, and so now we're going to overcompensate into an idea of expectations, because I want this a certain way, and this has to be a certain way, and when I date someone, these people have to act this way, and they have to buy me flowers, they have to take me to dinners, they have movies, all these different ideas, and we do that. I really want you guys to understand that the foundation of worry and pensiveness is expectations. You have to understand that when we are children and when we are adults, everything we judge, every judgment in our life to any situation is coming from an expectation. And when those expectations don't meet, what ends up happening? That we don't become fulfilled, and then all of a sudden we start that chain reaction of emotions that are coming. And a lot of us, we don't understand, because hey, we were told, well, if I got good grades and I went to school, that I would have a solid career and nothing would ever happen. Well, we know that companies go up and down all the time. We know we get fired for no reason, especially in this day and age of corporations. People fire you for absolutely no reason. You can devote your time 30, 40 years, and you can be fired just like that for no reason. And why? Because somebody wants a cheaper, less expensive employee. And so we have these expectations that we're going to be safe, that everything's going to be stable, that everything is always going to be in our life. And, I'm not going to get into what happened this weekend, but there was expectations in that tragedy that happened with one of our family friends. People, there was expectations that when you have children that they're gonna outlast you, that they're supposed to live longer than you. And a lot of times people don't have that expectation. That's one of the hardest things. When we were talking about sadness and grief last week, and I talked to you about being a medium and working with people and having the parents come in, that was the hardest thing, was my child was supposed to outlive me. And so we have all these things that we're going to worry about. We have all these things that we're going to want to live by. We're going to have certain rules, and all these rules, all these constructs, all these expectations create stress in our life. And really, isn't that what really worrying is all about? Worry is equal to stress, right? When someone says you have stress, what they're really saying is you worry all the time. You're always worrying. And we have to be able to take a step back. We have to be able to detach. It's hard. There's a lot of time, especially in this in the spiritual community, where I hear all the time that people need to live in the moment. You need to live in the moment. You need to be in the now. There's books, Live in Now, and all this other stuff, audio tapes. And how can we live in the now if we're always worried about tomorrow? And I know right now there's a lot of troubling thoughts going around. There's a lot of there's a so-called pandemic. There's there's people being laid off work because of it. There's all sorts of things going on, and life is ever evolving. And if we have these expectations in our mind, if we create these concrete blocks of expectations that these are supposed to be here, and when life changes, because we don't know. If we knew what was going on all the time, then we would never have these expectations because we would be prepared. So how many of us really knew that 2020 was going to be like this? Did we? Nobody did. Or at least most of us didn't, right? Well, a lot of us weren't aware of it. A lot of us had no clue what was going to happen. We had this idea that, hey, 2020, like every year I saw these people on social media say, hey, 2020 is going to be the place to be. It's going to be my year, everything. And then all of a sudden in February, the coronavirus came out and everything was shut down, and boom. All of a sudden, now I see nothing on social media, and I hear from friends when I go out to places, oh man, 2020 sucks. I can't wait to get this year over. 2021 is going to be better. And what do you think that is? That is an expectation. And expectations lead to worry. Worrying leads to stress. And this is the cycle. This is the dangerous cycle that we're in when it comes to this type of emotion, because worrying creates this so much stress that it can actually kill you, and it could be very harmful to the body. And we're going to get into all the geeky stuff later because, I got some geeky stuff for you. But one of the things that I want you, especially you new parents, is I want you to understand, and even as adults, we have to understand that expectations are passed down from our parents to the children. And so we have these ideas, and I was one of them. My dad wanted me to take over the family business. My dad had all these expectations for me to build a business, to go all over the country, and to be this global corporation and all, and I just didn't want to do it. It just wasn't for me. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. But my parents had all these expectations on me due to religion, due to work, due to school, due to all the things that they were told to do, because they said, hey, if you want to be a good person, if you want to be a good model citizen, well, then the good model citizen gets good grades, they act a certain way, they're very polite, they're ladylike. I know my sister, I didn't get this, but my sister went to where they take to school and they do all this fancy fancy work where they teach you how to be proper and everything. And because that was what was expected, because when we went to dinners with politicians and political stuff, then all of a sudden we had to act a certain way. Even with family, even sometimes with our own family, if we didn't sit at the table right, there was expectations for that. And I know many of you, probably had these ideas where if you acted up or you didn't eat all your food or didn't do certain things, your parents would get upset with you. And so I really want you to think about that. If you're a new parent or if you have children, don't pass down your expectations from what you expect of them. Allow them to grow, just like how you wanted to learn how to grow, just like how you wanted to be your own individual person. You're never going to be that person, and your children are never going to be allowed to that, because they're going to have these expectations, and that's going to create worry. And you're going to build a child, or just like how we are, that we're constantly worried, we're constantly stressed out, because we always have these goals, we always have these high demands to be met. And so one of the things I have to ask ourselves is, if I look at it, I say, well, what are our conditions of life expectations? Because if we have all these things, what are you exactly expecting from life? Have you ever actually written down or actually taken a moment to think about what it is that you're actually expecting from life? Because a lot of times we don't know. That's why we're so unhappy. That's why we're always stressed out and worried, because we don't know what we're expecting from life. But we have all these expectations. We have all these ideas, all these goals, all these dreams, but we don't know what's conditioned to us. And that's the most dangerous part to the soul, because how can we grow? How can we live in the moment? How can we be that person of growth and development if we live in a state of worry? Because remember, worry is a very low vibration. It stagnates. It stagnates the body. It stagnates the mind. It stagnates the heart. And we can't. I know that even the other day, since this tragedy happened, I've tried to meditate twice, and all it kept playing in my head was the situation that happened and the instances and what the parents are going through, because I have experience in that area. So I'm going through with what the parents are going through, and I had to stop myself because I couldn't meditate, because all my mind was going to all this worry due to somebody else. And so I had to learn a long time ago, and even though my parents didn't like it, I had to say, you know what, Mom and Dad, I love you, but this life is not what I want. Well, you got to go to school. You got to go. I said, I will go to school, but I have to find out what I want. I have to find out what I want from life. Because I don't want to expect from life what you want me to expect from life. I don't want to have to worry. At 9 years old, I didn't want to have to worry about taking over a multi-million-dollar company and having that pressure. What kids do. But parents, you do that to your kids all the time. And even if you're not parents or your children are grown, you do this to yourself all the time. So if you're always worrying, if you're always stressing out, you're expecting something from life that may not be possible or may be far-fetched. So paying attention to what you expect, relationships, job, friends, anything, everything, because a lot of us, we can't have healthy relationships, whether they're romantic, friends, or family, if we're expecting. Because I know a lot of you who even write into me, and who my clients and students, and they sit there and say, well, I say, okay, well, when you think of friendship, what do you think of? And they say, oh, well, friends should be loyal, friends should be there for you, friendship. And I'm like, why are you expecting so much? Well, they should be. They have all these different, that's what a friend is. If I'm in a relationship with them, they should act this way, they should call me, they should do, and they're putting all this stress, all this worry, all this expectations on these ideas. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is let it go. Don't ever have an expectation, because every time you have an expectation of what someone should, would, or could do, you are going to lead yourself into worry. Your worry will create stress, and we are going to become unhealthy. And that's what most of the time, worry, believe it or not, and stress is actually very dangerous to us. When I sit there and I say, oh, well, there's anger and fear, and then there's worry and pensiveness, and I say, which one sounds worse? Of course, people are going to say anger and fear. But the truth is worry and pensiveness is just as deadly, just as hurtful to our soul and to our body as anger and fear, because worriness stops us. Pensiveness stops us in our tracks, just like anger, because we're not able to focus. We're not able to feel and become aware of what's going on in our life. But you know, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back from a message from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and hopefully, so just bear with me. I'm having a little hard time with today's show. So like I said, I'm not feeling the best today. And so if I'm a little off with my speaking today, just don't pay no attention to it. But anyways, let's get back into worry and pensiveness. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to ask you is to look at yourself. What kind of person are you? If you're a type of person that is very hard-nosed, if you're a type of person that is tit for tat, if I do a friend a favor, then they gotta do this, or if I did this for my family, they gotta do this. If you're one of those that, hey, I did you this favor, you owe me. What type of ideas, what type of expectations are we doing? Because what ends up happening is not only does it turn into worry, but anxiety happens. Many people who suffer from anxiety, or many people who suffer from worry, also suffer from anxiety as well. I know firsthand that someone who has anxiety worries, because I used to have anxiety, panic attacks, all sorts of good stuff all the time, because I worried about everything, because I was taught to worry. My parents, I loved them to death. They had the best intentions for me, but they created me to worry. And what's funny is, now that I live away, when I go back home, I look at them and I constantly tell my mom and my sister and everybody around me, my family, I'm like, why you guys worry so much? Like it becomes a lifestyle. It becomes an idea, and every little thing you start to worry about, every little thing upsets you, every little thing starts to become this anxiety factor, and then everything falls apart. Of course, everything. And trust me, I know that firsthand, because once the mind starts to worry, once that energy starts to trickle down into the body, then you're going to go into a fight or flight symptom, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But everything's gonna fall apart. Then you're gonna look at yourself and start having a mindset, well, this is gonna fail, this isn't gonna happen, people don't like me, and it starts to trickle down into all these stagnant ideas. And I don't want to say negative, because we know on this show we don't believe in positive or negative as far as good or bad, because there's no such thing. So they're not negative thoughts, they're stagnant thoughts, because anytime you start to worry, anytime you start to anxiety, what ends up happening is similar to anger, where we start to stagnate the energy, because that's what happens, right? When we get tense, what happens to our body? When we have anxiety and we start to worry, what happens? We're either pacing left and right, but we're so tense, our muscles are so tense, because we have this mindset. We have literally shut down and stagnate everything in everything in our body. We're at constant worry. And a lot of times, if that doesn't become checked, what ends up happening is it becomes depressive. You become to a depression. And I know I've had depression most of my life, I since as far back as I could remember, and that was hard to overcome, because what happens in depression? Depression, you're worried about all the things you don't have. You're worried about all these ideas and all these expectations that didn't fill up to your idea. I'm not here yet. You know what? I'm 30 years old. I should be here. I should be married. I should have this. I should have this amount of money. You know what? I worked really hard for this and I got fired. All these ideas. So all these cycles, all these things that go in the mind are created by this idea of worry, which is created by expectations. And the hardest thing that I say to people, and I know a lot of people probably aren't going to like this section of the show, but that's all right, is our belief systems. And I know I talk about our belief systems creating false stress all the time, but it is true. Your belief systems, what you're taught, is how you perceive yourself. So I grew up in religion, and I was taught all the time that, and I'm not knocking religion, to each his own. Everybody has their own path. Whatever way you bring to happiness to yourself, kudos to you, but I'm just talking about me. And I know there's many people that have crossed my table over there that have said the same thing, but I was taught that there's this angry God out there that's going to punish me, and I had all these list of rules that I had to go by, and if I wasn't jumping on each and every one of these rules, and I wasn't following this each and every day of every second, well, then I'm going to be punished, and I'm being judged, and I'm this bad person, and then I got to repent my sins. And it was this vicious cycle of creating this false sense of stress. You are a beautiful person. You do not create sin, no matter what you do. We've all lied. We've all done something really shady, really nasty to somebody. We've all done so many things. None of us are perfect. And you have to see that all these things that we do, which other people call sin or create this level of stress, what ends up is teaching you how to be who you are, how to find love, how to focus on you, and how to turn it around. Because if we don't go through those trials, if we don't go through those struggles, we don't understand happiness. We don't understand self. Remember, everything is about perspective and perception, and how we perceive self, and how we can perceive every situation with multiple perceptions. And that is the hardest part. But if you're taught to believe that there's someone out there or something, or even you're judging yourself for everything that you ever do, well, then where are you leading yourself to? You're leading yourself to a lifetime of worry, stress, anger, pain, and suffering. It is one of the most painful lives to live. Someone who worries all the time, it's a hard life. It really is. Our emotions are not real, but we create these experiences based on all these false beliefs, all these false perceptions, all these rules that have been told to us that aren't true. And I know for a fact that so many of you are going to be so surprised when your time comes to pass on. You are going to be so surprised what it's like really over there. You're going to find there's no God out there judging you. There's no one judging you. Everyone goes to the same place. All the stuff that you worried about, all the stuff that you believed in, all the stuff that you fought over doesn't matter. And you're going to find out that you were in charge of your life. You wrote your life. You were the command chief in every part of your life. And then you'll come back again because you have that karmic loop. You said, you know what? I haven't learned this stuff. I got to learn this stuff. And you'll come back with some of those same worries and different situations, different experiences, different bodies, different everything, until you learn to develop the sense of emotions aren't real. But you know what? I can use this information to understand who I am. And you're going to start to see one of these lifetimes, you're going to look around and you're going to really start to see, wow, how many people are caught up in all these ideas that are false. And whether they're cultural, religion, whether they're strict parents or jobs or whatever, you're going to find how much people worry over things that aren't true. And that's one of the hardest things for people to understand. I go over this with Caleb all the time. I go over this with many of my students. And people have this false sense of belief about themselves because of all these ideas. So they worry. They go into stress, anxiety, fatigue, mood changes, all these ideas because they're perceiving situations that just aren't there. And I know from someone who suffered abuse in the past that we perceive things that aren't there either. I don't know how many times I was in the gym or I was at some place and I would see somebody looking at me, and all of a sudden I would turn around and my mind would start pretending, like creating this whole scene that this person's going to come at me and attack me, and then I'm going to fight them, or I just created this huge fight in my mind. Our mind, if our ego is left unchecked, if we don't understand how to process the information that's been taught to us, will create ideas that just aren't true. And 99% of the time, what we perceive things to be are not true. And that's when you recognize at that moment, the worry, the stress, the pensiveness, the anger, the fear, they dissipate. Because now you're looking at things rationally. Because when you're worried, when you're stressed out, are you really rational? You're not. You're not rational. I know when I used to worry, I wasn't rational. I would make stuff up in my head, my mom or my, whoever would be like, Miss Raina, you calm down. It's not happening. I'd be like, I know. I had to learn to train myself, to retrain the wiring in my brain, to stop worrying, to start realizing what perception I was really seeing. Because our decision making is no good the moment we start to worry. Once we become emotional, remember, once we're not understanding the information that we call emotions, then what ends up happening is the brain triggers certain things. Our prefrontal cortex shuts down, our decision making, our rational thinking shuts down, and we've lost the game. Even in too much happiness, you could see how many people are so happy that they found someone. They think it's that they're the person. They finally met the person. They're the soulmate, twin flame, whatever you guys want to call it, and they end up being one of the worst relationships that you've ever had. And we've all had it. And so our rational thinking must come from a place of neutrality. It must come from a place where there's no emotions, where there's no idea, where you can look at something objectively and subjectively. So you look at something and say, this is what I'm seeing. This is my perception. What am I actually seeing, without getting emotional? Because once we worry, I know for a lot of you who worry, what ends up happening is our sleep gets disturbed. We have stomach issues. If you have worry and stomach issues go hand in hand, we're nauseated, muscle tension. We have all this stuff, and I'm going to get a little nerdy for you just a second, because that's what I like to do. And then we start to produce cortisol. And what is cortisol? Cortisol is it helps us survive, right? It's a hormone that helps us survive, and cortisol makes us gain weight. So in a normal stress response, we see a stressor, our stress goes up, then our body spikes up our blood sugar, gives us energy, and then all of a sudden it's supposed to stop. We're supposed to get away from the stressor, and we're supposed to go back for normal. But because we have worked into an idea that we have to always be working, we always have to be pleasing people, we always have to be doing this, the world is falling apart, we're fighting over politics. I know politics right now is going on, and I'm going to hear politics for the next probably year and a half, because whoever wins, the losers are going to be, and so we're creating this ongoing stress. So what's happening is we have our stressor, which is every day of every second. So our stress is always up, our blood sugars are always up, our insulin is up, because cortisol is insulin resistant, and then it becomes a chronic cycle, and it repeats itself, and the body says, oh, here's another stressor. 5 seconds later, boom, 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 and we're always worried. And that's why we become a lot of times insulin resistant, because cortisol is insulin resistant. So when your body is full of cortisol, the insulin can't do its job, and we develop syndromes like Cushing's syndrome, which is a high level of cortisol in the body, and our body goes nuts. We also have even cytokines. Cytokines are hormone-like immune system chemicals. They're messengers that cells produce to send to other cells to tell them how they're going to respond to things. And so when these cytokines become, there's inflammatory and non-inflammatory, or inflammatory and non-inflammatory. And so when these inflammatory ones constantly get produced, especially in the stomach, we become bloated. Because they're produced by fat, adipose. So we become fat. We can't lose weight. Then that's why we gain so much weight when we're worried and stressed, because we have all this stuff going on. We have cortisol, we have cytokines going nuts, we have all this stress. And yes, it is one of those things where we have to look at and say, you know what, so. All right, guys, I need a breath for a second. So, but let's talk about self-esteem issues. So, our self-esteem is how we look at ourselves, and we know that. Worriness shows that we're insecure. It shows that we are no longer confident, because if we are confident in our areas, what ends up happening? Then we know it's going to work out. When you're confident in something, you don't worry about it because you know it's going to get done. When you start a new job, no matter what field, you're a little insecure, right? You worry, and that's why you usually go on ride-alongs with people, or people show you the ropes of how things work, or you usually do some type of residency for a while, because you have to learn the ropes. You have to build the confidence, build the procedures, build all this stuff. But when you're confident, there's no need to worry, because you go in there and get it done. But when you worry, that means you're insecure. And so now we have to look and start changing our ideas, that from something not working out to something that will work out. And these ideas of low self-esteem, again, relate back to our childhood, back to what we were talking about earlier, about our expectations of how things are supposed to be. And again, these are all set up in our childhood. Remember that anytime we have an issue, if we want to get over an issue, we have to go back to our childhood and see where the root of the cause is, because it always stems to childhood. Whether how we're treated by parents, how we're treated by school, our friends, how we're treated, how well we did in school, how much we were judged. There's a lot of judgment in kids, right? Kids judge each other all the time, and parents, they just say, oh, it's just being kids. But those judgments, whether you're cool, whether you're smart, whether you're nerdy, whatever you're labeled, it starts to make its mark on your brain, and that starts to develop, starts to condition you, whether you're going to become an angry person, a fearful person, a person of worry, a person of pensiveness, a person of happiness, etc. So I always tell people that, like, especially parents, like, parents punish for bad grades, and my parents were one of them. And I look back now and I say, well, you know what, you don't punish for bad grades, because what you're teaching kids, that you're teaching them that they're not at a certain level, that they're not good enough, and all the other kids, and you're constantly comparing them. And I know how that felt, because I was compared. There was some times where I didn't get good grades because of my ADHD, and people back then didn't understand it, but I was looked at as a bad student, and my dad would get upset. You're smarter than this, and you need to do this, and start punishing me by breaking toys, or when I got older, taking away my car or whatever. And it would give me this false sense of insecurity. Like I would be like, well, you know what, I'm not good at this, so why even try? It wasn't that I wasn't good at it, it's just that I didn't learn just like everybody else. But I worried about that every single day. So just because you don't do something well, that doesn't mean you can't do something well. It just means you have to figure out how you're going to do it in the way that you do it best. Don't let other people judge you. Don't let their judgments turn into worry. And same with your judgments. Don't judge yourself based on somebody else. Because if someone else is good at something and you're not, well, hey, that's great. That's their skill. You may rock at someplace else that's completely different. And a lot of us, we don't understand that. We try to compare ourselves to everything, and we think that, oh, well, if I don't do this, then I'm gonna fail. Everything is a failure, and and they're successful. I'm never gonna be successful, and it's just this comparison. And comparison is worry, because it's judgment. It's that expectation. Well, I need to be here when I'm here. It doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter. And I even tell Caleb this all the time. And Caleb sometimes, especially when he first started working with me, he's like, oh, Miss Raina, I hope to get to the point where I'm like you. And I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I hope to become. And I said, knowledge doesn't make you who you are. It's how you act. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I mean, like your actions, like your choices in life, I would rather take a kind-hearted person who helps others, who is compassionate towards others, and who tries to do things to make this world a better place, than all the knowledge in the world. And because we're insecure, we compare ourselves to other people, and we think, well, if I'm not this, then I'm worrying, I'm creating this insecurity, and I need to be this in order to look at myself as something great. But you are great the way you are, and that's the hardest thing. We'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and we have 20 minutes left. It always seems to start going by so fast, but I am still having trouble, so bear with me. I'm a little bit out of breath still. So one of the things that people who worry love to do is be comfy. They love the idea of comfort. They love the idea of stability, because they worry so much that everything's going to fail, that everything's not going to be not all right anymore, that everything's going to blow up in their face. They become creatures of habit. They love to be comfortable. They want everything to stay the same. They go to the same restaurants, they eat the same foods, they have the same friends, they go to the same places. Oh, hold on one second. Yeah, it's rough today. So they have all these ideas, and these ideas become habits, and these habits don't want to change because of this. And so we have to be able to understand that when we're looking at worriness, we have to look at our habits as well. If we don't like change, if everything has to be the same, if everything has to be this idea of comfort, then we are in a state of worry. Because people who are secure don't mind change. They don't mind going outside the box. They don't mind things disrupting them, because they understand that it's going to be that they can pull themselves back at any time. Homeostasis is just part of our biology. It's just part of us in us that wants us to always remain the same. And sometimes when we think of things that are disrupting the homeostasis, we think of those things as bad and negative and evil and these ideas. And so start changing the perception of how we do things. Start going outside the box. Start challenging yourself. One of the things that I started doing years ago was skydiving. People ask me, well, Miss Raina, you're claustrophobic and you hate heights. Why do you skydive? And I say, well, simple, because one, I have to stick myself in a plane that's tiny, so it helps me face my fears of being of claustrophobia. And then the other one is when I'm standing out on the edge of the plane looking down at 18,000 feet, I have to face my fear of heights and then falling through the sky, which is the best, by the way, is I push myself, because I know that if I allow my worry, if I allow myself to get to that point, then I lose all control. I lose all control. I lose my mind starts going there, and then I become habit forming of having that idea. So one of the things I want to skip to, because I got so much to talk about in only 15 minutes, is I want to talk about a few minutes about toxic people, situations, and everything. Then we're going to get into pensiveness and a few things on how to help. But people who worry are a lot of times surrounded by toxicity. And that's the first thing that I always cut out of my life. If I find myself stressed, if I find myself anxiety-ridden, I always say, what are the situations, what are the people, what are the places that are creating this toxicity or creating toxicity in my life? What is stressing me out? And I look at it and I say, okay, well, these people are causing stress. These people are always causing anger and just pain and suffering in this situation. And every time I go here, this place makes me uncomfortable. So I look at that and I say, okay, well, that's one of the first things that I have to do is say, okay, well, toxicity is equal to worry because that adds the stress on, because people should not add stress, places should not add stress, situations should not add stress. So look at your environment, look at the people around you. How are you living? How are they living? Everything around you is toxic. And you know what? Don't be afraid to cut it out of your life, because that is one of the healthiest things for you to understand. If you want to alleviate worry, one of the best things you can do is get rid of a lot of the things that are causing that toxic energy or causing that toxic stress. And some people might not like it, but remember that your health and your mindset and your spiritual journey is about you. So don't worry about what they're going to do. Don't worry about if people don't understand why you're no longer around, because you have to adapt to what you're doing. Maybe 10 years ago you enjoyed doing certain things and maybe you do it out of habit, but if you don't enjoy it anymore, the same people maybe you outgrew and they're still always causing drama and fighting, and that just stresses you out to the point of anxiety, then you don't have to be around it. And it doesn't matter if it's family or not. And I know that's hard, because a lot of people say, oh, it's family, I have to deal with them. No, you don't. Toxicity is toxicity. And no matter who it is, mothers, dads, brothers, nephews, sisters, whoever it is, friends, family, whatever, and that it is your choice to be happy, and it is your choice to remove that toxicity. So pensiveness, let's get into that a little bit, because pensiveness is just a deep form of worry. It's a deep, serious thought. It engulfs you. Those of you who are pensive worry all like to an extreme. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The world falls away. Nothing exists but what you're worried about. And that's the hardest thing, because people who are pensive are afraid to make decisions. Why? Because if they have anxiety and fear that if they make the wrong decision, that if something extremely bad or horrible is going to happen to them. And so they dwell on it and they try to play out every scenario in their head instead of just seeing a few perspectives, making a decision and going with it and adapting. Pensive people can have a hard time adapting to life because of that idea. They're afraid of the wrong decision. And once we understand Miss Raina's no-nos, there is no right or wrong, then that idea of making the wrong decision dissipates, because there is no anxiety, there is no fear along with the decision. You make a decision and you go with the decision that you made, and however it pans out is meant to teach you a lesson. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, then you know what, you learned how not to do it and you learn how to do it differently. And that's the wonderful thing about it. But pensive people don't see it. It's obsessive thinking. It's over and over, just to the point where sometimes it becomes it evolves into fear. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are like that are very obsessive thinkers. And I've run into those people over and over, where I have people that I'll say, okay, well, what do you want to do? What do you like? Or, why is this such an issue to you? And they just repeat it over and over, and they can't get away from it. They're always expecting the worst, and and because of their choices and because of their insecurities and because of everything in their past, they have become a person of extreme worriness, always expecting the worst, always going to be the wrong decision. No matter what they do is always going to lead them to pain emotionally and physically. It could lose them their job. They're really attached to things. People who are pensive are really attached to things, and worry people too, because they associate happiness with ideas and objects. So loss of a job, relationship, friends. People who are worried, people who are pensive will have that. So let's get into, because I know that one of the things that people want to always do with being worried and stuff is that they're always trying to fix things. They're always, well, if I can control it, if I can control it now, then I can rectify my past. So my past, because it was so chaotic, if I can control now, then my past will be better. My past be as painful. They try to find ways to fix everything. Those are one of those that a lot of times they look like perfectionists because they're so worried that whatever they're doing isn't good enough. The projects that they're doing, that they're always tweaking everything to the last moment because nothing is good in their eyes. A lot of times they people that are pensive as well can't joke around and they're serious. So what do we do to fix? What do we do? Like, because a lot of people say, well, what do we do to fix things? Well, first of all, there's nothing to fix. So let's get that idea to fix out of our mind, because there is nothing to fix. It's just changing our perspective. It's just changing our idea of ourselves and our ideas around us. So how do we do that? Well, we acknowledge and observe the situations and the things around us. In other words, we become mindful. We have to have mindfulness. We have to be observant. We have to acknowledge our life and the situations for what they are. We have to acknowledge the way we're thinking and feeling, and we actually have to realize the actuality of reality. And so we have to remove ourselves, because a lot of times when we're pensive, when we're worried, we have this projection. Remember, we talked about it, that people are going to hurt us. This isn't going to go right. All these bad things are going to happen. So we have to stop ourselves, and we have to say, okay, and this is what I do too. When I used to have panic attacks, when I used to have challenges in my life, I used to sit there and say, okay, Miss Raina, what are we doing? I'm thinking this right now. I know this isn't true. I'm feeling this right now. I'm feeling my anxiety, because I'm thinking that I'm observing this. But what really is going on? And I have to tell myself, first, I'm not in danger, unless I really am in danger, but it's never happened. It's just my mind creating this idea. And so I look at this, and because my mind wants to create the chaos. Remember, we're always in fight or flight mode, and the brain always wants to send chemical messengers throughout the body that are the ones that you handle the most. And so if we're always worried, then we're always going to be pumping out those chemical messengers. And so the mind wants to create that. So I say, okay, Miss Raina, let's stop. Let's think about what's going on. You know this person's not going to come over and attack you. You know this car's not going to fall apart. Whatever the situation is. I start observing my situation. Then I ask myself, okay, well, what are the triggers? What just triggered me? Because there's always a trigger. What triggered me? What associated? So what did I see that associated to something in my past that created this whole stir up of me freaking out or me starting to worry or whatever? And it doesn't have to be something that we're seeing. It could be in work. Sometimes there's projects. It could be in relationships. I know people who are jealous, people who worry all the time about being cheated on. That's because they've been cheated on in the past. So you have those ideas, and so you have to look at those triggers, and you have to be observant, and you have to see how these past ideas of stress and worry and these past experiences are creating these false sense of ideas. And once we figure out the triggers, then we can say, okay, well, now I know the trigger. Now I understand what's going on. Now I understand that this person, this situation, this idea reminded me of such and such and such. And again, now we go back to the situation. We say, okay, let's go back, because this situation doesn't matter anymore, because because my association is to the past. So this person is only, or this situation is only fearful or worrisome to me because of my association. And then I just deduct it from there, and then I focus on there, and really understanding your feelings, understanding and recognizing your feelings, and realizing that the situation isn't what it is because of your past changes your mindset greatly. It is very hard to do at first. It really is. Because when you're in that worry mode and you get anxiety or panic attacks, or you start to stress into a really bad idea, then it's really hard to calm you down. And that's one of the reasons why I got into CBD and natural herbs that calm me down, because when I got into those modes, I can take something natural, plant-based, that would help my body. And I'm not recommending anybody, so don't go out there. Always talk to your doctors before you start taking anything. But for myself, I got into it because CBD helped me. And so I would calm myself down first. And then once I calmed down from the panic, I could look at things objectively and I would say, you know what? Okay, Miss Raina, let's break it down. And then I would. And it got to a point where I don't need to do that anymore. So the next thing I always tell people is talk about your stress, talk about your worry. Find a therapist, find a good friend that's going to listen, that's not going to judge you, that's not going to write you off after a week. And I don't mean to become codependent on them, but I mean talk about your issues. When something's going on in that situation, I would always have my friends, if I was in a crowd and all of a sudden I'd go into a panic attack because I would start worrying about something, or I was experiencing something that was because I was worrying and it would lead me someplace, and I would call up people and say, hey guys, I'm going through this is what's going on right now. And I would have kind, compassionate friends that understood and would never judge me. I've had friends in the past that after like a few times of me talking to them, they avoided me because they thought I was calling them all the time. But you don't need those type of friends. And I'm not saying call your friends for every second, but only for the stuff that's really going on. But express how you feel. And that's one of the reasons why I say therapy is one of the greatest things. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean anything other than you just need to talk. I even still see a therapist. I see a therapist every once in a while because, hey, I deal with a lot of people's stuff. And sometimes I'm still human. I have stuff going on. And sometimes it's just good to talk to somebody else that's not going to be judgmental. And it really is. And I know I've had clients and students here that have come to me and have taken my program just because they wanted somebody to talk to that understood their feelings and emotions and their experiences. And it just changed their perspective having someone that understands that. There's going to be a lot of people that don't understand, and that's fine. That's why you have to surround yourself with people that really do. So one of the things I always say is take a deep breath. When you start to worry, take some deep breaths, focus, get that center, admit that you're worrying, admit that you're freaking out, admit that you're starting to stress out, and again, analyze yourself, ask yourself why, what, who, what, when, where, why, and start to deduct, start to find the trigger, and and the most important thing is realizing we're safe. And you know, in my home, when I used to have great panic attacks and memories that were coming up, I would start to think things and start to worry and start to stress out. And then I had to take a step back. I took some deep breaths. I admitted to myself what was going on. And then I realized, hey, Miss Raina, you're safe. You're in your house. You have your dog here, or you're with some friends. Everything is good. And then realizing the truth about the situation. So, all right, guys, honestly, I'm going to cut it here. I'm out of breath. I'm ready to go lay down for the night and that. But I really wanted to do this show. So I apologize for the information kind of being goofed up and just my speaking today, but that's the way life goes sometimes. So, all right, guys, let me get my little pad out here because you know I always forget this thing. After 7-8 years, you think I would memorize it, but you know. So, anyways, guys, don't forget to follow our Facebook at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation. Our YouTube is Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. Visit our website, soulandspiritguide.com. Make sure you sign up for the newsletter and receive VIP access to hidden shows and special guest offers. And as always, remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.